Okay, let's dive in. We've got a really fascinating collection of sources today. I mean, this isn't your usual set of articles. We're looking at stuff directly from Doza Crew.
Right, transcripts from their own deep dives, lyrics, project notes, even a catalog entry and like a logbook piece. It's unusual.
Totally. It really feels like we're getting puzzle pieces straight from them.
And the mix itself tells you something straight away. This isn't simple. This deep dive, it's a chance to get behind the curtain a bit, explore this world they've built using the material you gave us.
Exactly. So our mission today, try and figure out what connects all this music, these characters, these themes, and see what insights we can pull out for you.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting, possibly a little weird, but thought-provoking for sure.
Okay, so where do we start? Their sound, their identity.
Let's start there, the foundation. Now, the sources mention German hip-hop as a base, but it's clear, like immediately clear. They don't just stick to that.
Oh, not at all. The analyses we have, especially for tracks like Gold and Greets, they talk about pulling in metal, folk, electronic sounds, industrial. It's everything.
And it's not just blending, is it? The language used in those sources is strong ignoring genres or even obliterating them.
Right. What does that really signal about how they approach music?
Well, the Greets and Katzengold sources suggest it's not just playing around with sounds. It's deliberate, maybe reflecting this kind of outsider thing.
An outsider identity.
Yeah, they seem to be using dissonance, these like weird time signatures, specifically to make it sound unsettling, or alien, as one source puts it.
So the sound itself is meant to feel off, maybe, matching how they see things.
That's how it feels, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the sound mirrors the feeling of not quite fitting in.
That tracks. And speaking of unique things, their language is a whole other layer.
Oh, absolutely. The lyrics are apparently super dense, lots of wordplay, double meanings, even made-up words.
Like hers Blit from Gold.
Exactly. And sources looking at GRD, Weriwawas, Katzengold, they talk about how this builds up into a unique Doza Crew dialect.
So they're not just writing songs, they're literally building their own language.
Pretty much. Their own code, like you said earlier. And then there's that very specific sound, the O call.
Oh yeah, the Klein-Dornock analysis mentions that. Used strategically, sometimes obvious, sometimes hidden.
Like a tag, right? Marking their territory in the sound, or maybe controlling the energy. It's their signature.
Okay, so we have this foundation. Sound that breaks rules, language that builds its own. What kind of world are they painting with all this? What themes pop up?
Power and control definitely jump out. Several sources mention political satire.
Yeah, the Spotlight 0824 deep dive even brings up dictators, comparing them to Chaplin's great dictator.
And the Huppenset source gives a really clear example of how they do this musically. The song Huppenset, it's described as having this like driving hard rock feel. But it's deceptive. It features this dictator character, Ader Strafe, and uses this catchy chant, Huppenset. The source says it pulls you into this world of nationalism and aggression.
So the catchiness is part of the critique, showing how easily people get swept up.
Exactly. The source makes that point. It's a clever, if unsettling, use of contrast.
Very. But it's not just political power, is it? They also seem to get into psychological power. The Sandman character comes up in Spotlight 0824 and GRD.
Yeah, he seems to represent the subconscious, or maybe fear, the power to warp how you see things. And the imagery linked to him in Spotlight 0824 is, well, it's pretty graphic. Nightmares, kids' eyes bleeding.
Yikes. Very visceral.
Definitely.
And the GRD analysis mentions that the line between the Sandman and another character, Florian, gets blurry.
Right. Which adds another question, doesn't it? Is this psychological threat external, like the Sandman, or is it internal, tied to Florian? It makes you wonder where the real monster is.
Good point. And connecting back, the context mentioned around airplane and radio in the Huppenset source seems to suggest a bigger warning about power itself, no matter the form.
Yeah, a broader critique. So, moving from power structures, there's also this really strong current of darkness, hardship, but also, interestingly, resilience running through these sources.
Absolutely. The Ewiger Streifzug source feels like Exhibit A for that.
Yeah.
It's full of apocalyptic stuff, zombies, society falling apart, decay.
Like walking through ruins, yeah.
It even details specific zombie ideas, this endless march, the song Infect, comparing zombie spread to paranoia, and Schattenwesen, shadow beings.
Shadow beings, described as what? Like twisted reflections of ourselves or what's lost?
Something like that, yeah. Reflections of darker selves or lost humanity.
Yeah.
And the imagery they use is potent, like Sinnen Schreienlies, souls screaming softly from Firebend.
Wow. The Uyghur Streifzug source says that captures feeling lost in chaos.
Yeah, encapsulates that internal struggle amid external collapse, apparently.
But what's striking, as you said, is that even with all this bleakness, there's this sense of pushing back, defiance.
The Uyghur Streifzug material mentions that resilience directly.
And the Düsterdal source seems to capture that perfectly. It describes hardship, struggle, but with this, like, undercurrent of defiance. Darkness is the struggle, fire is danger, and the will to overcome.
So it ends uncertainly, but acknowledges strength.
Yeah, it recognizes the toughness needed to face it all.
And that toughness, it seems like it often comes from connection, finding strength together. The BKRDN Platt source talks about that, focusing on a specific place, back Raden.
Right, it's about local pride, dialect, finding warmth in the darkness of that neighborhood. Resilience through shared history, referencing maybe a local crew, a pub. The Cats and Gold context hints at that. Hyperlocal, but tapping into something universal about belonging.
But then there's the flip side, isn't there? Isolation is just as strong a theme.
Totally. The Verborgi melody source apparently explores being lost, isolated in a world that's maybe beautiful, but also kind of terrifyingly angry.
Walking alone, finding freedom in anonymity, but with a cost.
Yeah, the source notes an unease there. It uses images like Einsamer Stern, a lonely star, and being swept into silent darkness. It really captures how being detached can feel freeing, but also scary.
And maybe connecting these two, isolation and connection, is that recurring idea of the Schleif, the loop, that pops up in Uyghur Streifzug and crew lore.
Ah, the loop. It feels like it works on multiple levels, right?
Yeah, like the literal zombie march you mentioned.
But the sources also link it to that human feeling of being stuck in a bad job, stuck in negative thoughts.
That line, Ich bin im Loop from Nebelnach, mentioned in Uyghur Streifzug, really hits that feeling of being trapped in a cycle.
Definitely. But then there's maybe a different kind of loop, a creative one. The collaborations mention Damon, Kiram, JMO in the Doza catalog, and 1187 TRX.
Suggests a tight creative circle, right? A community around them.
Yeah, and the sources like Greets and Klingdernacht mentioning a fan base forming around this unique music, it suggests their work actually creates connection for listeners who feel that outsider vibe too.
True. Although, going back to Huppenset.
Right, the dictator example. It serves as a warning too, doesn't it? Even belonging can be manipulated. Group identity has shadows. It's complex.
Okay, another big theme that stands out is technology. The digital world. Crew lore talks about a mainframe and digital rebellion.
Yeah, this seems pretty central in some tracks described. Mainframe revolution, digital rebels, bits and bytes in our hand, that kind of thing from crew lore.
And jailbreak. Escaping a digital matrix. Gefangen im Loop. Trapped in a digital world.
Exactly. It feels like more than just sci-fi tropes. They seem like metaphors for, navigating our own complex, maybe trapping digital lives.
And Klabauterman fits in here. He's normally a ship spirit, right? Folklore.
He is traditionally mischievous, but the Klabautergarn source explains how Doza crew reimagines him. He becomes this urban explorer, warrior, and digital navigator.
A digital navigator.
Okay. Yeah, a master of code who can slip through firewalls, according to Klabautergarn. It's a really clever way to update folklore for these themes of digital struggle and escape, linking him to the mainframe idea.
But there's that twist in Klabautergarn, the line, Ich bin meines Meisters Slave, I am my master's slave.
Yeah, that really jars against the image of him being a master hacker, doesn't it?
It does. Could that be a commentary? Like, even when we think we're mastering technology, we're still kind of bound by it.
Could be. Or maybe the Klabautermann isn't as free as he seems. It adds that layer of ambiguity. Classic Doza crew, really. More questions than answers.
Which kind of leads us perfectly into looking at how they make their art and how they seem to actively pull you, the listener, into it all.
A huge part of that seems to be blurring reality and fiction. The GRD and Cats and Gold sources point this out. Characters like Florian and GRD, is he real? Made up? A bit of both.
And they mix these maybe real characters or details, like real places or dates mentioned in GRD, with totally fictional stuff like the world of Tomania from Huppenset, or their own mythology that Cats and Gold mentions.
They build their world by sort of twisting and weaving bits of our own. And these sources, they give us these amazing little windows into how they actually build it.
Like the Doza catalog.
Mm.
It sounds like an archive, right? With volume numbers, project names, suggests a really ongoing, varied output.
Yeah, mentioning things like a Grand Theft Auto audio series or Mike's Waffen Facts series. It shows range.
And the Doza project's leak source sounds even more raw, like works in progress, weird sounds, recurring bits.
And it apparently blurs the line between making the art and the finished thing. The source says they even put instructions in the lyrics sometimes. It challenges that whole idea of a perfectly polished final piece.
Huh. And the Cheap Farts lyrics. And Miro Stink for Mirko Stinks, mentioned in the Doza Project leak.
Yeah.
Those details are kind of absurd, but they tell you a lot.
They really do. It shows they embrace the weirdness. They're willing to challenge what counts as serious music. It brings humor into the process itself.
Which, as the Cats and Gold source notes, is maybe a needed counterpoint to how intense some of the themes are,
Right.
like the battle rap context mentioned in Spotlight 0824.
Exactly. And then there's the meta level, their own deep dive videos being listed in the Doza catalog.
Right. They know they're making something complex, and they're analyzing it themselves. Maybe the analysis is part of the art.
Could be. It fits with their interest in loops, maybe. Not just being stuck, but looking at the loops, reflecting on the process, like the repetition in some tracks.
Yeah, the analyses of Malsite Cool
Right.
and Weary Well in the Cats and Gold source mention that. It's not just musical repetition.
No, it can be hypnotic or build tension or, like the Cats and Gold source suggests, mirror that feeling of being overwhelmed, stuck.
The Multi-Cool source details how they took found audio and made it unsettling through repetition and distortion. Makes you think about authorship, digital art.
Right. And this is really where you, the listener, become crucial. They deliberately leave things open. That comes through in sources like GRD, Cats and Gold, Doza Projects Leak.
The Cats and Gold analysis literally says it's not about finding the answer, it's the journey. They want you to piece it together yourself.
Find your own meaning in the chaos, yeah. The kaleidoscopy in Cats and Gold sources really emphasize that. You get the pieces, you build your view.
So, okay, pulling this all together from this amazing pile of sources you shared, Doza Crew crafts this world with sound that just ignores genres and this really inventive language.
Yeah, and they dive headfirst into really complex themes. Power, darkness, community, isolation, tech, all while mixing up the real and the fake.
And their process seems so raw, unconventional, sometimes funny, but always asking you to look harder.
And even with all the intensity, the darkness, these sources consistently show moments of resilience, connection, even humor popping up.
Their music isn't just something to listen to passively, is it? Based on Klabotagarn and Cats and Gold especially, it feels like an invitation. Engage, question, explore.
Definitely. It challenges your ideas about what music can even do. The Doza Project's Leak and Cats and Gold analyses really drive that home.
Wow. We really went deep into this fascinating, sometimes confusing Doza Crew world, all thanks to the materials you provided.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all this. It really let us connect some dots and see the layers beneath the surface, just
Yeah.
how much more you find when you can dig into the context like this.
Absolutely. So it leaves us with a thought, doesn't it? Thinking about Doza Crew's loops, their fictional worlds, digital traps, the struggle of being stuck. Based on everything we've talked about, what are the loops or maybe the hidden illusions in your own reality, the things that might be holding you? And how can engaging with art that's this complex, this challenging, maybe help you spot them and start thinking about breaking free?